ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। नमस्कार। तरति शोकम आत्मवित। Aatmavit, the knower of the self, Shokam Tarati, crosses the grief. We discussed the introduction that Bhashyakar Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya gives Bhagavad Gita, whereas we said, summarizing what is conveyed through the entire first chapter and the first 10 verses of the second chapter, Bhashyakara says that these verses are meant to convey that Shoka and Moha are the problems of Arjuna. Bhashyakara says that whenever one suffers from grief and delusion, Shoka and Moha, there is a tendency to discard one's own duty, which appears painful, which appears unrewarding or painful, and a temptation to perform the duty of the others. In the case of Arjuna, his duty is as a Kshatriya to fight this battle, to confront the situation. It is true that it is a very painful situation, meaning a situation which has very painful consequences. It's going to involve the death of near and dear ones, and certainly the outcome is very painful, which Arjuna says, Swajanam hi katham hatva sukhinas syama madhava. Hey Madhava, how can we be happy killing our own near and dear ones, Swajanam? Nacha shreyo nupashyami hatva swajanam ahave. I do not see any good coming out of killing the near and dear ones in this battlefield. So giving up Swadharma, his dharma or the duty as a Kshatriya and in the Vedic system of Varna and Ashrama, of the caste and the stages of life, the duty of a Kshatriya such as Arjuna is to protect dharma, to protect the subjects and to protect the dharma. And naturally, protecting dharma in this situation calls for confronting adharma. There is an attack of adharma, and as a Kshatriya, Arjuna is required to defend the dharma. Except that in this case, defending dharma or righteousness requires him to resist the attack, fight the attack. And the fight is going to involve the deaths of people on both the sides, which Arjuna naturally finds very painful, and therefore does not want to perform his duty. Swadharma parityagaha, giving up one's own dharma, one's own duty. And once Arjuna's mind is convinced that he should not fight this battle, he finds enough reasons to justify his stand of why he should not fight the battle. And you said earlier, towards the end of his statement in the first chapter, he says, Yad rajya sukhalobhena hantum swajanamudhyataha. How sad it is, how unfortunate it is that we are ready to kill our swajana or near and dear ones, rajya sukhalobhena, as prompted with the greed of power and pleasure. So this is how he sees justification of not fighting this battle. He declares, Nayotse, O Lord, I will not fight this battle. Well, if you do not fight this battle, meaning that if you do not take the call of a Kshatriya, then what will you do? As long as Arjuna maintains the status of a householder, of a Kshatriya, then he knows that it is his duty to respond to the situation which requires him to fight this battle. So at one point in the second chapter he says that rather than killing these revered ones, bhoktam bhaikshamapiha loke, I think that it is better that I take the life of bhaiksham bhikshacharam. This was a suggestion. Guruna hatvahi mahan bhavan shreyo bhoktam bhaiksham apiha loke. Rather than fighting this battle, which involves killing of my gurus and the revered ones, Shreya, I think is better. Bhoktam bhaiksham apiha loke, then in this world I sustain myself on the arms, begging my arms. Now, begging the arms is not allowed except for a sannyasi. Well, a sannyasi, a renunciate, has the sanction from the scriptures that he can go and beg bhiksha. Bhiksha means begging. So when Arjuna says that I think it is better to survive or sustain myself on the food which is begged rather than performing this action which involves killing off my gurus and revered ones, this is a suggestion of taking to a life of sannyasa, which is not Arjuna's dharma. Arjuna's dharma is to fight the battle as a kshatriya. In the Vedic times, sannyasa is the dharma of a brahmana. So, swadharma parityagaha, renouncing or giving up one's own dharma, the duty, and paradharma, taking up the paradharma, the dharma of a brahmana, of a sannyasi. This is similar to grass is greener the yonder. In this mental condition that Arjuna is, what is called for to do, he thinks is wrong, is painful and therefore wrong. He terms his action as himsa or violence rather than dharma, and therefore taking to the life of a sannyasi as a life of ahimsa, non-violence. So he justifies his decision of not fighting the battle. And since you have to belong to some order of life, if you give the order of life of a grihastha or a kshatriya, then you take up other order, in this case sannyasa. All of this struggle Arjuna goes through in his mind. Conflict. He knows that as a kshatriya it is his duty to fight the battle. At the same time, he feels that it is going to bring about very painful consequences in two ways. That he will become the killer of these people. Hanta. He will be the killer of Bhishma, Drona, other near and dear ones. And further, what will I do without them? Ahamesham ete mama. I belong to them, they belong to me, they are mine. And without them, what shall I do? Swajanam hi katham hatva sukhinas syam madhava. Yesham arthe kangshidanna rajyam bhoga sukhani cha. Te me avasthita yuddhe pranam styaktva dhanani cha. Those for whose sake that we would want the kingdom as well as the pleasures, they are all staying in front of me in the battlefield. And therefore, I don't want to kill them. Api trailokya rajasya hetu kinnu mahi krute. Lord, I don't think I should kill them. Even if I get sent to gain the kingdom of the three worlds, what to talk of just the kingdom of this earth? He has a sense of guilt also, that I will be a killer And secondly, I'll be miserable without them. So in the technical words, we can say that when Arjuna says that I will be their killer, meaning that I will be the agent of the act of killing, it is called kartrutva. Arjuna's kartrutva, the sense of doership. I will be a karta, a doer, the agent of the act, in this case, act of killing. And I'll be a sufferer, a bhokta, a sufferer of pain as a consequence of this battle. So like anybody else, Arjuna looks upon himself as a karta, as an agent of action, and bhokta as the experiencer or sufferer or a victim of the result of the action. There is nothing unusual about it. Every human being feels this way. So in fact, we would think that Arjuna's stand is justified. That he should not be called upon to kill his near and dear ones. He should not be called upon to create suffering for his own self. So we can further look into that. Because the discussion is shoka, the grief which arises from moha, the delusion. What's the delusion here? What's the Brahma or delusion here? Isn't what Arjuna says is right? And he'll be the killer and he will have to suffer the consequences? Yes and no? Tatra pasya sthitan partha pitrun atha pitamahan matulan bhraturan. So when Lord Krishna said to him, Hey Partha, Pashyetan Kuruniti, look at these Kurus who are assembled here, the descendants of Kuru, meaning that your cousins and near and dear ones, look at them. Then Arjuna saw his elders, gurus, grandfathers, uncles, maternal uncles, paternal uncles, friends, his nephews, all the near and dear ones he saw. Looking at or analyzing this, this is what Vedanta would say is moha delusion. To see one's kith and kin, to see one's near and dear ones in the battlefield is not right. In the battlefield, this relationship of the Guru-Shishya doesn't apply. That Bhishma is my great-grandfather, great-grandsire, that doesn't apply. Drona is my Guru, doesn't apply. Or that Duryodhana is my cousin. These relationships do not apply in the battlefield, understand? They certainly apply at home. But here, all these people simply represent adharma. Duryodhana is the leader of the Kaurava army and he is embodiment of adharma, non-righteousness. Even though Bhishma and Drona are said to be, they are dharmatmas, they themselves are very righteous people, but they are supporting Duryodhana, that means they are supporting adharma. All of them represent adharma. On this side, Yudhishthira represents Dharma, and Arjuna, being representative, Yudhishthira also represents Dharma. So really, this is conflict between Dharma and Adharma, not conflict between Pandavas and Kauravas. This is called delusion. That whereas this is the conflict between Dharma and Adharma, where Arjuna represents Dharma, Duryodhana represents Adharma. If this was Arjuna's perception, he would have no conflict at all. If Arjuna recognizes and owns up his role as the one who is there to defend Dharma, and that he has to fight against the force of Adharma, there is no conflict in mind of Arjuna. And that would have been the right perception. With that perception he came to the battlefield. Somehow that perception changed. Something happened to Arjuna. And rather than looking upon the people in the opposite army as representing Adharma, something happened in his mind. And he started looking upon them as Kauravas, as his relatives, as his Svajana, as his near and dear ones. Then of course, the response is going to be different. This is moha, which is what causes shoka or grief. If this delusion was not there, if the clarity were maintained in the mind of Arjuna, that there is conflict between adharma and dharma, there will be no grief at all. It would be very clear. With very clear conscience he would have performed his duty. Right now, he feels guilty on account of his own perception of others and therefore his perception of himself. Therefore, the shoka, the grief that is created in the mind of Arjuna is on account of his own perception of himself as both a villain as well as a victim. He perceives himself as a villain, as a killer, as a karta, the agent of act of killing, and then a bhokta, as a victim of the consequences of this action. So this is how Shankaracharya explains the cause of grief in the mind of Arjuna. The shoka and moha are the problems of Arjuna. Bhagavad Gita presents and describes in detail what is going on in the mind of Arjuna. First, to understand these fundamentals of life. If you understand that the cause of shoka or grief on the part of Arjuna is moha, the delusion, which gives rise to shoka, grief, which further gives rise to moha, by the way. Because when Arjuna is grieving in his mind, there is grief, then there is this conflict about what is right and what is wrong. And Arjuna reports as such, dharma sammudha chetaha. Oh Lord, my mind is bewildered. I am totally confused in reference to what is dharma, what's the right thing for me to do. Sammudha. I am very well deluded with reference to dharma, what is the right thing to do. So now what to do in a given situation? becomes also a conflict because of the grief in the mind of Arjuna. Karpanya dosopahata svabhavaha. My svabhavaha, my nature, is apahata, is overwhelmed, overpowered by karpanya, dosha, by the defect of karpanya, krupanata, miserliness. In this case, miserliness is looking upon oneself as a karta, bhokta, as an individual, as a limited being, as inadequate, as helpless. Therefore, Vedanta would say that this perception about oneself is the result of the ignorance of the self. Self-ignorance. Not knowing the true nature of oneself. And therefore, looking upon oneself as contrary to what one truly is. Therefore, avidya, ignorance, gives us to moha, the delusion, the wrong perception of oneself, which in turn gives us to the wrong perception of the situation, the world also. So this is a lesson that we have to learn from the state of Arjuna. We are nowhere near where Arjuna's situation is. And thank God that we are not called upon to confront situations like this. But from that we learn this lesson. That Arjuna is grieving. Shoka samvigna manasaha. His mind is completely overpowered by grief. Tam tatha krupayavishtam. He is as though possessed by krupa or self-pity. Now that does happen to us. Even though we do not have to confront situations like Arjuna, the kind of situation, the challenge that we have to confront, these things do happen to us. That we are overcome by grief, we are overcome by a sense of helplessness. That is what is meant by pity towards oneself, feeling helpless, feeling incapable of doing what one wants to do, and incapable of avoiding what one wants to avoid. I cannot do what I want to do, and I cannot avoid what I do not want. Helplessness. So this helplessness, which arises from one's perception that one is an individual being, a limited being, confined to this body-mind sense complex. So looking upon oneself as an individual, like Arjuna looking upon himself as Arjuna, nothing wrong in it, but that's Arjuna. And therefore, a grandson, as a disciple, as a cousin, as an uncle, as a friend, this perception of oneself arises from looking upon the self as an individual. Looking upon this body, mind, sense complex as the self, Certainly there is a cousin, there is a disciple, there is a grandson, no doubt about that. Where is that? That's the dharma. That is the nature of this body. There is a kshatriya, that is the state of the body or the mind. All of these things belong to the upadhi of the body, mind, sense complex. And when I have the perception that I am a disciple, I am a son, I am a grandson, I am an uncle, I am a cousin, I am a friend, I am a father, I am a mother, that perception about myself arises from looking upon this body, mind, sense complex as myself. So what's wrong with that? Well, that is a state of things. Each one of us looks upon the self as this body, mind, sense complex. We are born with this kind of perception of ourselves. We are born with a perception of ourselves. Which seems to be right, but then that's what it is. Vedanta teaches that this is not the right perception about ourselves. I'm not this body, mind, sense complex. I'm someone else. So the question of Aatmavit, the knowledge of the self, comes when there is ignorance of the self. So we discussed today this vakya or the statement Tarati Shokam Aatmavit. The knower of the self crosses the shoka or grief is taken from Chandogya Upanishad, which in that 7th chapter does not explain the mechanism of grief. Where sage Narada declared that Suham Bhagavan Shochami, O Venerable Sir, that great Narada I am grieving. But the anatomy of grief is not explained in Chandogya Upanishad. Therefore we came back to Bhagavad Gita, where also the context is of grief, shoka. And Bhagavad Gita explains the anatomy of grief. As Bhashyakara says, the verses of the 1st chapter of the Gita, in the first 10 verses of the 2nd chapter, are meant to explain the anatomy of grief. It's very clear that Arjuna is grieving. But these verses describe the thinking process that is going on in his mind. From that thinking process, we derive this lesson. The Arjuna thinks that he is Arjuna, he is a cousin, he is a Swajana, that he is a warrior, and this situation demands that he has to fight the battle and kill these people, meaning he'll be a killer. And the consequence of the battle is that he'll be left without all his near and dear ones, he'll be all alone and therefore miserable. One would think that, Swami, this seems to be reasonable. It is reasonable. And Arjuna also thought it is all reasonable. But whether it is reasonable or not, the fact remains that Arjuna is deeply immersed in grief. Shoka moha mahodadho magnaya, the one who is immersed in the ocean of grief and delusion. Anyatra atmajnanat. Lord Krishna finds that other than atmajnanam, other than the knowledge of self, nothing can bring out Arjuna from this ocean of grief. Meaning that nothing can bring out the human being also from the ocean of grief. What causes grief? The situations are different with different people. No doubt about that. It can be all this coronavirus, lockdown, uncertainty, fear. Now there are demand that this lockdown must be relaxed. You must go back to a normal life. That's what one aspect says. Because people are fed up. They are tired. They feel suffocated with the situation. They want relief. They want freedom to do normal things of life. People cannot do normal things. You cannot go out, at least in India, you can't go out and shop. You can't even go out and buy your grocery because you don't know that fellow is a super spreader and we are afraid even of buying grocery or buying vegetables. And once people are given freedom, as in India, as in US also and anywhere in the world, people take it easy, they forget everything. So-called social distancing. In fact, that's the only thing that can save us from this virus. But that social distancing is a pain in the neck. Therefore, you find people just crowded on the beaches. No idea, no notion of any distance at all. In India also, when the freedom is given to go out for essential work between morning, I think, 7 o'clock to afternoon 4 o'clock, you can see people crowding. The roads are crowded with the vehicles, with two-wheelers and so forth and cars. And no concept of any distance at all. So on one hand, our mind wants to take this liberty because it becomes helpless and suffocated with the confinement which went on for months together. On the other hand, there is fear also that corona is waiting for a physical contact, not even a physical contact, coming within the distance of 6 feet, where one can be affected by, the speech of the other person. Apparently, that also carries this virus up to 6 feet, they said. So that fear also is there. Conflict. What should I do? What should I not do? What's right? What is not right? What is right is social distancing. Is what I should do. What I want to do is I want to be myself. I don't want to be bothered. I want to be with my friends. I want to meet with them. I want to go to a restaurant. I want to eat with them. In a jocular way, somebody forwarded a photograph. It was a photograph of people sitting in a restaurant and happily eating their meals. Yeah, this is how it used to be way back in 2019, People can't do that. You can't go to, I guess, in India at least, all barber shops are closed and no physical contact. So situation is very similar. On one hand, the mind wants to do something. On the other hand, we know that there is danger involved there. There is fear, conflicts, fear. And we see close to 100,000 people in the United States have lost their life in this coronavirus. And I'm afraid that among them also could be some people known to us, some people dear to us also. So shoka, the grief, is a very common thing right now, everywhere, the whole world. Anyatra atmajnanat, says Bhashyakara, that Lord Krishna does not find a solution to the grief and delusion of Arjuna by other than self-knowledge. No psychological solution is possible for Arjuna. No tactical solution is possible, Lord Krishna thinks. Not by teaching Arjuna how to fight the battle, what the strategy should be, what the attitude should be, that also will be taught later on. But the real solution to the problem of grief, which is, in words of Pujya Swami, the fundamental human problem. So as you pointed out earlier, there are two kinds of problems in the life of a human being. Who, as you say, is the evolved being, self-conscious being. If we were not evolved, then the idea of the cousin, etc. would not have been there. Swajana, my near dear, would not be there. That I am killing and therefore I am guilty, that would not have been there. All of this would not have been there if we had not evolved to a point where we have. So this price we have to pay for evolution. And then we pointed out earlier in the last class, there is no shoka and moha in creatures other than human beings. Because they do have a degree of self-consciousness, but not the enhanced level of self-consciousness that a human being has, where we are conscious of our status, our individuality, our relationships. We are conscious of the emotional problems. There is not much of emotion as far as the creatures other than human beings are concerned. There is some emotion, but then they forget about it. When they lose their child, yes, there is grief, but then they forget. But all of this, that means that the Creator has gifted us with a sophisticated human upadhi, with a sophisticated mind or the buddhi, intellect which can discriminate, with a sophisticated consciousness where we are self-conscious to this extent, that all the great gifts or privileges that we enjoy, which also bring as a consequences this suffering, the emotional suffering. The physical suffering is common to all living beings. Janma, mritu, jara, vyadhi, the birth, death, the old age, the disease is all common. I did not know, but now I realize that animals also have a disease like diabetes, like cancer and so forth. Dogs have that and other creatures also may be having them. Birds also have. So as far as physical suffering is concerned, it is common to all living beings who possess a body. But as far as emotional suffering is concerned, it is something unique to the human beings. I don't think the dogs which we have in our home, our pets, are aware of this coronavirus, aware of the problems arising from physical contact and so forth and so on. They don't have fear, they don't have anxiety, they don't have grief, the mental suffering, the afflictions that we have. So is it good or bad? This emotional suffering that we are given as a consequence of evolution, is it an asset or a liability? It is both an asset and also a liability. As I say, is marriage a word or a sentence? Marriage is a word. If you know how to live, how to relate with each other, it can be a life sentence if you do not know how to relate with each other. So this is a situation of a human being. That a given situation can be a problem, and the very thing also can be a solution. Our Swamiji's famous statement, you are the problem, you are the solution, or what is a problem also is a solution. Jokingly would say, mother-in-law is a problem because you're stuck with her, she has landed in your home with no intention to leave. And so whatever problems there can be, that son-in-law has, this person has. Mother-in-law is a problem. However, when Swamiji comes to town, and he and both couple, the husband and wife want to go and listen to Swamiji, then the mother-in-law comes very handy. You can leave your children to her care. That time she is a solution also. So I guess that is how things are. Everything is a problem depending upon our perception, and that very same thing also is a solution, again depending upon our perception. So our perception of our own self is the cause of all our problems of grief and delusion and emotional suffering. That is what we mean by problem here. Others are all situations. Even coronavirus is a situation. That we do not know exactly how it behaves is a situation. That it seems to be spreading and we don't understand how, maybe a situation. When that situation causes fear, anxiety, and therefore irritation, which irritation then manifests in my interaction with people around me as intolerance, and therefore anger, and in terms causing conflict. and suffering on my part and part of others with whom I relate. All of this is caused because of the perception. Situation is there, but it is my perception of myself and therefore my perception of situation that creates all the state of mind where there is suffering. The same same self that I am, and there was a situation also could be perceived in a different way, in which case it would not be a problem, it would be a solution. So I am the problem to myself and I am the solution. When you say I am the problem, it means that the wrong perception that I have of myself, which is called moha, becomes a problem in creating shoka or grief. The wrong perception of myself, that's what Vedanta says, is what causes all mental afflictions. It is true that when the mind gets afflicted, it can become so damaged that then we may need other kind of solutions in terms of therapy, etc. And when mind gets further damaged, even that also may not work, then you need drugs. Sometimes that also may not work, you need further solutions like alcohol and stuff like that. So it is true that when the mind is not treated, when it should be treated, how it should be treated, it can keep on getting damaged. And yes, as long as damage is within reasonable limits, which we all have, so long what Vedanta teaches helps us. When mind gets damaged beyond a certain point, then we find that these things do not help us, then we need some other solutions, which also Lord Krishna provides. Therefore we said last time that Atma-jnanam, Atma-vedanam, the knowledge of self, is in a way imparted in two stages. Lokesmin dvividha nishtha pura prokta mayanaga jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam. Lord Krishna says, for those whose mind is healthy, let us put it this way. There is ignorance, all right, but the mind is healthy. In which case, Sankhya Yoga. The path of Sankhya or contemplation or vichara, a deliberation upon the nature of self, would be able to solve the problem. When the mind is not that healthy, when it is damaged, meaning that it is infested by the raga and dvesha, attachment and aversion, by the defects of raga dvesha, then this solution of self-knowledge doesn't quite work. Then we need to heal that mind. The mind is damaged, wounded, hurt. Therefore, we need to heal the mind. Thus, becoming free from shoka or grief is a two-step process. First step is healing our mind, and second step is educating the mind, enlightening the mind. Although Chandogya Upanishad says, Tarati Shokam Aatmavit, the knower of the self crosses the grief. The knower of the self becomes free from grief, overcomes the grief and becomes free. Which is what says Narada did become as a result of teaching of Sanat Kumara. But that works when the mind is healthy. Even though, says Narada, was grieving all right, but still his mind was what we may call healthy, who enjoyed the antahkarana shuddhi, the purity of the mind. Ignorance is there, and still the mind enjoys purity. So that is a mind where the upadesha or teaching of the true nature of self would work. So it is said, Tarati Shokam Aatmavit, the knower of the self crosses a grief. It is true that the ultimate solution of becoming free from shoka, grief, anxiety, fear, anger, frustration, all these afflictions is the knowledge of the true nature of the self. And therefore, Lord Krishna, giving the benefit to the listeners that they are those who are enjoying their healthy mind. In Vedanta, they would call Uttamadhikaris. Adhikaris, the students, fit students, enjoying Uttamadhikaritvam, enjoying fitness, enjoying a healthy mind. So it is traditional to first of all address these people. And therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita also, Lord Krishna begins his teaching with self-knowledge. Tarati Shokam Aatmavit. Now Bhagavad Gita is a manual which shows how Arjuna did become free from the grief, as we pointed out earlier. Where Arjuna reported, Nasto moha smriti labdha tat prasadan maya chuta sitosmi gata sandeha karishye vachanam tava. When Arjuna said at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, karishye vachanam tava, O Lord, I will do your bidding. I will do what you ask me to do. Meaning that now I am free to do what the situation calls for. So far, Arjuna was not free. Even though in his mind, in mind of his mind is new. As a Kshatriya, his duty is to fight this battle. That his intellect knew this. But his emotional mind resisted that. That's where the conflict. karpanya doshopahata svabhavaha. The intellect is overcome by the defect of karpanya, by the defect of wrong thinking. And therefore, that wrong thinking, perception, delusion, the part of the intellect, brings about all the emotional problems or suffering or afflictions at the level of the mind. So yes, true, we have two problems, no doubt. The intellectual problem and the emotional problem. If there is no emotional problem, that's what we call healthy mind. Not overcome by emotions, one enjoys the composure of the mind. Then Vedanta directly addresses the intellectual problem of ignorance, where ignorance right now is confined to the false perception that the intellect has of one's own self. And that's how Lord Krishna begins his teaching. Ashochan anvasochastvam. Tvam ashochan anvasochaha. You are grieving about those who do not deserve to be grieved for. How can you say, O Lord? I'm confronted with this miserable situation of the death of the near and dear ones. How can death not be the cause of grief? So Lord Krishna says in the second line of the same verse, Gatasun agatasumscha nanu shochandi panditaha panditaha na anusochanti. Lord Krishna is panditaha. Panda mitaha panditaha. Those who have gained panda, Brahmajnanam, as the commentators explain. Panda means Brahmajnanam. Pandamita, those who attain Brahmajnanam, those who attain the true knowledge of the self, those who are the knowers of the self, Panditaha. Na anusochanti, they do not grieve. Now remember we said that we do not grieve. Meaning that when the grief takes place in our mind, it's not our doing. I don't grieve. The grief takes place. It gets me. It happens. As in case of Arjuna, tam tatha krupaya avishtam. He was as though possessed by krupa, self-pity, possessed by grief, shoga samvigna manasa. So grief happens, whether we want it or not. It will happen when there is a state of mind which is conducive for grief. Whether we like it or not, grief will happen. And therefore, it calls for a transformation of mind so that grief does not happen. So Panditaha, the wise people, when we say that they know the self, they have Panda, the knowledge of the self, they know self is Brahman, as limitless, ever free. That means that they have brought about a complete transformation in their mind, where there is right perception of the self, and therefore there is no scope for grief, no occasion for grief, no scope for grief. Meaning, grief cannot enter their mind. Grief does not seek my permission to enter. It enters my mind and takes over me. But when my mind changes, the perception changes. When I have the right perception of myself, Panditaha, When I become Pandita, a knower of the self, nanu shochanti, even though literally says they do not grieve, what it means that the grief does not happen to them. Grief cannot overtake them. Grief for what? What Arjuna is grieving for? Which Lord Krishna said, Asocyan. Who are the Asocya? Who are those who do not deserve to be grieved for? Second line says, Gatasun, Agatasumsya. Asu means breath, life breath. The wind means life breath. Gata asun, those from whom the life breath has departed, meaning those who are dead. Agata asun, meaning those from whom the life breath has not departed, who are alive. So they are, for us, they are the Shocyaha. As Arjuna and as we also. We grieve for those who are gone and those who are alive. Both of them become the cause of grief. Not only do we grieve for those who are dead, death causes grief, no doubt, but we even grieve for those who are alive also. That's all there is. Ashochaha. Lord Krishna declares both of them as Ashochaha. That neither those who are gone nor those who are here, they deserve grief. Why do you say that? Because Panditaha na anusochanti. Because the wise do not grieve for those who have departed and for those who are alive. Which means that it is not the act of departing somebody or the act of somebody being alive that should cause a grief. It is something within me that causes the grief. It is something within me that makes an event grievable, if you can use that word. Shocha. It is I who make an event as an occasion for grief, and therefore it is I who has to make that event such that I become free from grief. We'll continue our discussion in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashyakrutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah. Ishvaro Gururatmedi Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.